So welcome everyone to the 13th NFT Guild Roundtable, the last of 2022. Today we have a special guest, Alexander Watanabe, the creator of Unsigned Algorithms, talking about his latest project, Gucci.io, a platform that lets you short or HODL Cardano NFTs. So I'm going to give the floor to Alexander now to run us through his project.
Great, thank you. Can you see me okay? Can you see the presentation all right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so we're Gucci.io. The kind of tagline is put your money where your Gucci is. This is the Japanese character for mouth. By itself, it's actually technically Kuchi, but it's used if you've ever been in East Asia in Iriguchi and Deguchi, which is entrance and exit. And because we're kind of focused on liquidity, it made sense that we're trying to make NFTs easier to kind of get in and get out of. Gucci seemed like a interesting kind of name. And I'm a big fan of double, or in this case, triple entendres, where there's like multiple layers to the meaning. So there's obviously something, people's first thought when they think of something that's Gucci is maybe not this, but it's like a derivative project. It's a imitation, which is very kind of common in the NFT space. Two is the thing about liquidity I just talked about. And third is, actually, we'll just get into it. If we give some context about, where we're at, what we're thinking about. We're all aware of NFTs and, monkey pictures and how they've kind of blown up the past year or two. One thing that we kind of wanted to foster was the ability to take things off of Twitter and off of like, your project's great, your project's shit, and these kind of like flame wars that happen. This is a scam, this isn't a scam, and to allow for gladiatorial combat via wallet to occur so that people can actually express themselves monetarily by longing or shorting a particular native asset on Cardano. And so the last thing that we're kind of saying as the triple entendre is, rather than fighting back and forth on Twitter about whether this is a rug pull or a scam or a legitimate project, at the end of the day, you can say, show me your Gucci, which is like a little bit of a fun way to say, yeah, like you can think all this shit, but if you aren't actually willing to put skin in the game to monetize your negative attention towards this project, it really doesn't matter what you think. So we're operating specifically on Cardano NFTs, and the problem kind of statement that we see in the space, this is not specific to Cardano NFTs necessarily, but there's a lot of FOMO, like tulip, price speculation, number goes up. What really got me kind of, my persona in the Cardano NFT space, I'm kind of a snob, to be honest, when it comes to art and what is and isn't art and this kind of thing. I understand that those views aren't popular, but I kind of kept my mouth shut for the most part until I started to see these projects that were kind of explicitly manipulating the market through wash trading, where it seemed like, they actually had like a line item expense in their monthly budget, pay 20,000 ADA in marketplace fees to the marketplaces by trading, a million ADA of volume back and forth to themselves so that they could secure the top level spot and then try to draw more people into the space. And then, of course, there's the garden rug pull, you mint and then they disappear type thing. So this is the problem space that we're in. And then we think that the solution is, rather than, wagging your finger at people on Twitter and saying, this is bad, it's actually just create the incentives to clean up the space on its own. Create incentives that allow people to essentially create the outcomes you're looking for. So we want to allow for negative sentiment to be expressed financially. And we think that will bring balance to the force, right? Like if you think about it, NFTs until now, it's like a seesaw where only one kid is playing on the seesaw. Only buyers or positive sentiment people can participate in the marketplace. And in any healthy market, there should be bulls and bears who are on both sides of the seesaw, able to express themselves. And in the long term, price should be some kind of reflection of truth. That usually the way you invest in something is you believe that the thing you're buying is priced incorrectly, ultimately. Like ADA is the easiest example, right? If you're buying ADA right now, you know, it's 25 cents or whatever, you believe that ADA is actually worth $3 or $5 or 10, whatever you think it is, right? You buy something when you believe it's mispriced, and that if you buy it and hold on to it, the price over time will correct itself. All shorting really is allowing someone to do it in the opposite direction. Basically, they sell something before they buy it, they wait for the price to drop, and then they repay their loan by buying it lower. So an example of this kind of user story, we have Alice, we have Bob. You know, Alice is the bull in this case, Bob is the bear. When there's Gucci kind of interfacing in the middle. So Alice will have some particular NFT project that she's bullish on. Bob will have ADA that he, you know, needs to participate. And essentially, you know, they enter into a Gucci together where she's saying, you can borrow my NFT in exchange for you locking up your ADA, your collateral, so that if you don't give me back another NFT from this project, by the time this Gucci expires, this loan expires, I get your collateral. So there's a few things that can happen. If Bob sends Alice the NFT, he's able to get his collateral back out, right? And the example I'll give is, let's say this is 1,000 ADA NFT. He should probably be collateralizing this for 1,200 to 1,500 ADA, something worth more than what it's at, because now he has an incentive to behave correctly and send back another NFT to that person. If Bob does not come back to the contract in time, like if it's a 20-day loan or a 30-day loan, you know, Alice is able to claim the collateral that was in that contract. One thing that probably the biggest thing people get confused about is, doesn't this already exist on Cardano? Like Lending Pond is a thing, right? Lending Pond is actually the opposite of Gucci, if you think about it. They're called NFT loans, but they're really NFT collateralized loans where if we were to redraw this chart, it's not about bullish and bearish. It's just one person has an NFT and they need ADA. So if this NFT is like worth 10,000 ADA, they can put it into the loan contract and maybe they can get 5,000 to 8,000 ADA back, right? So then the ADA provider sends that amount of ADA to the contract sends it to the person, and then they have 5,000 ADA and they're supposed to pay back maybe 6,000 ADA or 5,500 ADA by the end of the loan. And if they don't, the person who put the ADA in gets to take their NFT, right? So the NFT is always locked in the contract and it's the ADA that's moving around. In our case, the ADA is locked in the contract and it's the NFT that's moving around. And the one quirk is that we fungibilize for free all NFTs in the collection, because the way Gucci works is it's just matching on the policy ID, right? If you lend a space bud, you will be paid back another space bud. And so this works for, you know, what people call floor NFTs in the space. The good thing for us is that the large, if not majority, the plurality of NFTs in a collection are floor NFTs. It's where a lot of the volume is, where a lot of the liquidity is at. And so you shouldn't be putting your space bud bull into this contract because you can be paid back by a space bud alien or whatever. So people might ask, like, why would someone help someone short their project, right? So for Alice, who was the bull, you know, her incentive is that she gets this lender fee, which is a flat percent of the collateral. Most of the time, this seems to be a number between 2 and 5% for somewhere between a 2 to 4 week loan. If you do a 2% loan on a 150% over collateralized loan for 2 weeks, it works out to something like 70 to 80% APY. So by lending out this NFT that she's bullish on, she can almost pay for it if she keeps doing this 26 times a year for a 2 week loan, right, over and over again. So that's her incentive. The way I kind of think about this is NFT buyers are kind of like real estate buyers or investors, but they're just buying real estate properties right now and hoping that the price of that apartment or house goes up. But what Gucci does, it allows them to monetize these assets that they're purchasing and rent them out to bears. and basically put a tenant in that NFT, right? Someone who will pay you for the right to borrow or to use that NFT in some interim period. So it'd be kind of like the main thing that Gucci does that made me aware of is like, it's kind of crazy to be so invested in something and not have a way to have it make you money, right? Just relying purely on capital appreciation. So the incentive for Gucci is that we take a transaction fee and we are staking the locked funds. So while if this is a 20-day loan, any ADA that's collateralized in that thing, we are the direct recipients of the staking rewards for the ADA that is locked in that thing. And Bob gets the unique opportunity to profit from the fallen price of an NFT, right? So that's Bob is the one who's paying all the fees in this case. He pays the platform fee, he pays the lender fee, because he is given this unique in the world opportunity to short any NFT on Cardano. And Alice is incentivized by basically turning her capital into a rent generating asset. So there was a demo here. I can pull it up, whatever. Let's see. The one thing that I kind of want to say is this works on Cardano because of some core technology. You know, a lot of people talk about UTXOs all the time, but I think native assets are actually, and especially for this group of the NFT Guild, they're actually much more important than UTXOs. If you're familiar with, I think I'm not an Ethereum expert, but like how an ERC 721 minting contract works, it's basically what we call a dictionary in coding, where you have like a list of indexes from like 1 to 10,000, and then the value for all those keys is the owner's address. And what you're doing when you buy or sell an NFT on Ethereum or another EVM project is you're calling a method in that smart contract to update the owner's address in that thing. But it's kind of like a telephone book where it says all the numbers of the NFTs, and then it says who owns it. This is why it would be tricky to build Gucci on Ethereum, is because for every project that you wanted to whitelist or onboard, you'd have to go and verify its minting contract works the way you think it does, right? Like, does updating owner address actually do what you think it does, or does it do something else? And so this is called like an n-squared integration problem, where if you have all these different smart contracts interacting with each other, they all have to connect to every other smart contract. And it starts to, if you count the number of edges in this little graph, it's very high, right? But on Cardano, what we have is we have this base digital ledger, right? Which is basically a native asset is just another column in the ledger. And so it doesn't really matter like what token you have, what the token you have is. Like, I just, as far as I'm concerned, as far as Gucci's concerned, it's just another Lovelace, right? It's just another integer that we can represent on the blockchain. And so rather than having to for this guy to interact with this girl, or this girl to interact with this guy, like we all just interact with the ledger. And I think this is really going to cause dApps on Cardano to have a unique advantage over some Ethereum kind of thing. So that's the basic thing. This presentation is from before we launched. I just want to quickly show maybe Gucci. Go here. So we just kind of redesigned. You can now sort by the different kind of things, like the number of lend offers on the site, ascending, descending, the number of borrows and HODLs. I'll just pull up unsigs because it has this other core feature that we developed after we announced, which is what we're calling HODLs, which is, if you're familiar with NFT lingo, it's really a collection offer or a limit buy order, where if you have any unsig, you can sell it right now. The highest offer is for 225 ADA, right? So if I were to click this, I don't have a wallet connected on this thing. Sorry, I just noticed my screen was weird. But I can I can select any unsig from my wallet and I can sell it for 225 ADA instantly. It's like a sell it now button, because somebody else has put in 225 ADA saying, I will accept any unsig for 225 ADA. And this is really important, because if you look at a normal kind of market, this is just ADA on Binance right now. Like, you're probably used to seeing these sell walls and buy walls, right? Like when we're in the bullish season and it's like, oh, there's a sell wall at $1. Like there's a lot of resistance there. NFT people probably know this because they tend to like count down, like only 10 more NFTs till 1,000 ADA floor, right? It's all sell side asking prices. But if you switch over to this, what's called the depth chart, which is this thing, let me try to zoom in. This is like the cumulative integration of all the standing buy orders and all the standing sell orders for this token, ADA, right? And what it shows is there's a big sell wall. I'm looking right now at 32 cents. There's some big buy support around 20 cents. Makes sense, right? These big psychological levels, which is showing like support underneath the current price and resistance above the current price. And what Gucci does, and we've integrated, or CNFT Jungle has integrated our data, is the same thing for NFTs. Like this is unsigs right now, right? But these are all the asking prices for unsigs, right? And then here, this little green wedge at the bottom left is like the standing HODL offers. So what you know, Gucci, it's kind of easy to focus mostly on the shorting, but again, the name of the platform is named as such because it's really about improving liquidity in the space, where if you have a decent HODL wall or buy wall underneath the floor price, it kind of de-risks owning that NFT to a certain extent. Because if I have like, let's say I have 10 Space Buds, even for a popular project like Space Buds, it's kind of difficult to sell 5 of those at any given moment in time, right? Because if I list 5, someone's going to undercut me. Let's say they're all floor NFTs. They're going to start to undercut me. But what I can do is, like, if there's an actual buy wall underneath it, like I can sell one instantly at any time. Like if I have a car accident, I need money to repair my car, or my kid gets sick and I live in the States and I don't have, you know, the good health insurance system, like these things happen. Like you have convertibility or instantaneous liquidity that you have on tap. So that's kind of what's going on there. I will say, you know, Gucci is not beautifully designed. It's because my co-founder and I, just 2 guys, neither of us has any front-end experience. So we both worked in AI ML, and this is our 3rd front end. The first one, a guy ghosted us. The second one, like when we took it over, it was not really maintainable, so we kind of switched to this one. And we built this from scratch, learning JavaScript. Both of us hate JavaScript and never want to work in it again. But this is really, you know, we call it a beta or version 0. This has kind of shown the proof of concept of, you know, this is all using smart contracts, no custody, live on Cardano. And what we're doing is we're using this to basically show that we can ship an end-to-end dApp on Cardano and raise private investor or even VC interest in the product. So that's kind of where I'm at. Since we launched, I think there have been around 200 engagements in the week and a half or so that we've been open. There's around 10,000 ADA live in it. So the average engagement is usually somewhere around 500 ADA when you look at everything. And I think around 7,000, 8,000 visitors to the site so far. And right now there's like 137 live engagements on the site. So we've been happily surprised that even in the current state, there seems to be interest. People are using it. And there's actually some interesting use cases that we didn't consider. Maybe one that I'll just quickly go over is, you know, when you borrow an NFT, for the shorting scenario, the idea is that you would instantly sell it, wait for the price to go down, rebuy it, and repay the loan. But other people have actually used this to basically hedge or to get like a price match. So if we were to look at, you know, this unsig and we wanted to borrow this unsig because we were bullish on unsigs, we could put the collateral in. And then what we would do is, rather than selling the NFT, we would just hold it. And then if the price went up while the 25-day loan was running, you know, we could just default on the loan and lose our collateral. But if the price went down, we can just send it back to the contract and only be out 17 ADA. So this is almost like rug insurance, right? Like rather than buying an NFT for 200 ADA, if you borrow the NFT because you're kind of worried that it might rug, what you can do is the maximum loss you can incur is just this lender fee and platform fee, right? Because you have an asset that can be used to repay the loan, which is the NFT you got from the loan. So it's kind of like a lot of NFT projects, I think they have a tendency to either fall flat and fizzle or to moon. So basically, if you borrow, you know, it's like, if this moons, I'm not going to pay it back. And the lender will claim my collateral. If it stays where it is or falls flat, I will just send it back and I'll be out 10 or 20 ADA, you know, the fees for the thing. So it also, another very minor alteration to that is, let's say you borrow it, and then let's say you want to keep that NFT that you got. If any NFT appears lower in price in the next 20 days or 30 days, you can buy that on JPEG Store and use it to repay your loan. And you've essentially, you know, have like a cash back price match guarantee where you borrow an NFT of something you like. And if the price goes down in the next 30 days, you can buy any other NFT from the collection and use it to pay back your loan. And so you basically have a time window that you can, you know, even if you buy now and the price goes down within the window that you have, you're fine, right? You didn't, you're not out any money because you can close this obligation with any other asset. Does that make sense? It's a little bit different, but yeah, sorry, I'm kind of rambling at this point. I'll just stop sharing the screen.
Oh, but it makes total sense. Very nice. Thank you for the presentation. I must say that in the beginning, I actually had the same questions regarding why one should use their own NFTs and allow shorting of the NFTs, because then the price goes down, and that's counterintuitive for me. But this Gucci of yours is made more for the buyers than for the lenders, so to say.
Both. I mean, I'll reshare my screen for a second. It's probably, this is actually the biggest question, not the other one, but let's see, where do we go? I just gotta move this. Are you able to see this?
Yeah.
Figma. So this is the kind of case where if you have an NFT that's worth 500 ADA, like I said, your collateral should be set above the floor price. Let's say this is a floor NFT of 500 ADA. You set it at 750 ADA. If you charge 3%, this is of 750 ADA, that turns out to be 22.5 ADA for a 14-day loan. This is around where people are lending at, it seems like. All these parameters are set by users. We don't set the rates. It's all an open market. So that works out to 22.5 ADA. You can do that 26 times a year. That works out to 585 ADA, right? On an NFT that's worth 500 ADA. So I would actually say, like, the one modification is it really is, in a word, I don't like when people say this, but like staking for all NFTs or all native assets on Cardano in a sustainable way, because you're being paid this premium, this 585 ADA, by bears, right? And so what's funny is people on our platform, bulls, actually are like incentivized to find bears, right? Like before on Twitter, people would be like, stop funding my project, right? But now if you're bullish, like you can be hyper bullish by lending out your NFTs, being paid a premium, a rent, you know, to continue to hold this, to be exposed to the risk of holding it. And it actually works out, I'd say in most cases, better for the bull than for the bear. Because even if there's sideways price movement, if nothing happens, the bull wins, right? They get back another NFT from the collection, and they get paid the 22.5 ADA no matter what. They either get the collateral back, which is worth more than what the NFT was when they started, or another NFT back. So the bull has very little risk, other than if their project actually collapses while the loan is active. But even then, they will get back another NFT from the collection. So it's kind of, for most NFT holders who don't really sell when their project dips, it's really like a net neutral position. Does that make sense? Like if you're just holding no matter what happens to the price, there's really nothing that Gucci is doing other than allowing you to be paid a rent on your NFT.
Thanks.
And of course,
but thank you, Seb.
Yeah, that's assuming, of course, that there'll actually be a bear to pay you that, as it were.
I mean, if you make a listing and nobody engages with it, you're out to ADA for the cancellation fee, which is just, you know, covering UTXOs and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, if you can't find a bear, or if a bear can't find your listing, then that's that. The funny thing is, the first lens on Gucci were actually two friends. And I didn't anticipate this, right? It was like one guy who was bullish on chilled Kongs and one guy that was bearish, but they were buddies. They were like DMing each other every day. And they're like, they decided I think it's kind of like watching the World Cup and putting some money down with your buddy who's sitting on the couch next to you. Like, I think Argentina's going to win. No, I think France is going to win. Like, you actually don't hate the guy sitting next to you, right? But like, it makes the game slightly more interesting just to know, oh, 25 euros is riding on this. And I thought it was kind of cute. One thing that's made me happy is it does kind of bring together these bulls and bears in a kind of more, they start like checking in with each other, you know, like, oh, I'm up. Oh, you're down, right? Like, sorry, my camera just lost focus. And it's turned into a nice little kind of subculture, which is a little bit different than the typical kind of NFT FOMO thing that happens on Twitter.
Concerning that, I mean, finding bulls and bears and pairs, do you have a plan for matchmaking, as it were, or do you just expect that to happen naturally on Twitter, like you mentioned, or other platforms?
Yeah, so I mean, right now everything is grouped by policy ID, because it's actually quite important. A lot of people are asking us to put project names, right? But we literally don't show the name, because I think a lot of people don't understand what is a policy ID on Cardano. And like, I'll give an example. You can't short Clays on Gucci, because Clays is Good Charlotte. It's the original Clay project. It's Clay Nation. And our smart contract is not designed to handle different policy IDs, right? It's saying like, from the policy ID, you're taking one and you have to put back one. And so we don't see this as like a super user-friendly platform. Like it's kind of an advanced platform to be using. But when you go to a specific policy ID, you can see all of the borrow offers and all of the lend offers. These are both just Gucci's. It's just who has started the listing. It'd be like if eBay allowed you not just to sell your own stuff, like, you know, I'm trying to sell this SSD on eBay for 50 euros. But you could also put up, I want to buy an SSD for 50 euros. That's the main thing with Gucci, is you can borrow or you can lend. Both of these become the same thing when you find a counterparty, but we have two separate tables to show these are the lender initiated offers. These are the borrower initiated offers, because borrowers can say, I'm willing to pay this. I want this, and for how long? And lenders are able to say the terms for lending out their thing. But once you find two people, a bull and a bear, and they're matched, that happens automatically. But yeah, I guess that if you know what you want to do, you just go to the Gucci, you find the policy ID, and you're able to. Right now, there's not. I mean, it's like 150 something listings. It's not too onerous, and most projects only have a couple listings. You can sort all of the offers by, you know, whatever trait is more important to you, or whatever collateral level, price level, fee level. And yeah, I'd say it's kind of it operates a lot like Muesli Swap, if you've used that. Like the order matching happens by the user, essentially. And there's different ways to be the best listing. Some people might want lower collateral but a higher fee, right? They could be paid a higher percentage, but if they're not as protected if the price moves up. Other people might want a high collateral and a low fee. So because it's a multi-dimensional space with different parameters, there's not always like a best listing. It's best depending on what your risk tolerances are and what you're looking for. So that's the interesting thing about
it. Is there a possibility to watch particular policies and get notified?
So CNFT Jungle is pulling our API and dumping it there. We do, I mean, right now the site is very bare bones. So what you can only see a listing once it's engaged if you are a participant in the listing. When you go to like your user profile page, it shows you, you know, these are your lends, these are your borrows and this kind of thing. But we will be kind of adding a historical table to everything to show what's going on. And we are working with these other platforms to technically anyone can look at the data because it's all on the blockchain, right? Like it's literally there if you want to see it, but we are serving it up as an API to make it easier to consume for other people. We're focusing on our core value proposition, which we think is, you know, focusing around liquidity and borrowing and lending and this kind of thing. But we really like I said, that chart that I was showing from CNFT Jungle, there's a lot of ways that this data can be used. Kind of the main point of Gucci is to move the space beyond floor price and volume as like the most talked about things. Like to me, those are really, I used to be a data scientist working on AI ML. Like these are really dumb metrics to use because they're so easily manipulated and they mean almost nothing. Like volume is usually like a secondary indicator, right? Like, oh, there's a lot of volume today. Oh, there's a little bit volume today. But I don't know any market, like if you're talking about ADA or Bitcoin, where it's like oh my God, look at all the volume on Bitcoin. Isn't that so great? You know, like it's so weird that NFT, like how did we end up in this space that people buying and selling the thing is like the most interesting thing about it. And so the HODL wall, to me, it's a much more useful metric. It's like, what is the actual demand for this shit, right? Or this thing, to be more fair. Like people have actually put ADA on the table, and you can take that ADA away from them at any time by sending them one of these policy IDs. So I think these manipulated projects are much less likely to put that ADA on the table because it exposes them to risk, right? Like if they have to put 1,000 ADA or 5,000 ADA for every NFT to show there's some support there, any of the holders can use the project that's manipulating their metrics as exit liquidity. And that's a very dangerous proposition for a dishonest project who is just trying to, you know, get as much ADA as they can to sell it. And so that's where I think, you know, it's much more interesting to me to look at these kind of metrics of actual demand. Like what are people willing to buy in at than, I don't know, if you've ever bought or sold a house, there's these, you know, selling your house through the agent is the normal way. And there's always these, what are called in the States, for sale by owner. It's like the guy who doesn't want to pay the real estate agent and he's just like listing it on Craigslist or, you know, OLX, you know, buy my house. And usually what happens is the people who are for sale by owner, like they have a really overinflated sense of what their house is worth because like, you know, no market professional has come in and objectively told them, look, your neighbor just sold the same house last year, you know, very similar house to yours on the same street for 175,000 last year. You're not going to get 400,000 for this house. And so why I'm talking about that is like for the past year, we've only been operating with sell side asking prices. In almost any other market, there's bid prices. What am I willing to pay for this? And asking prices. What am I willing to sell for this? And there's always a gap between the bid ask spread. In high volume markets, that's a very tight spread, right? It might be like fractions of a penny. But in more illiquid markets, that spread gets wider and wider. And we're in such a weird kind of twilight zone that people think the lowest asking price is the floor, where in any other market, that would be seen as a ceiling. It's resistance, right? And it's like, that's why you get these idiotic things like delisting parties. You know, a delisting party doesn't make the price of something go up. It just means you're removing liquidity And the lowest asking price is now, you know, whatever it is, but it doesn't mean anyone will actually pay that price, right? And all we have right now are essentially market buy orders. Like, I will take the lowest listing. I will take the lowest listing. That's kind of the way the space operates, versus you can actually set up support on Gucci to say, you know, if you don't believe in this project, if you're out, sell me anything from this and I'll take it from you for 50 ADA or 100 ADA. And I think that's a much more useful metric to see how many people and at what price level can you exit this thing? No questions asked. But yeah, thank you. Interesting questions.
On a side note, aren't you worried that you're injecting too much analysis and thought into the NFT space?
Well, exactly. I honestly, I've started to think about Gucci as a time machine. I'm not really worried, you know, about people have said like NFTs are killing art or whatever. Like, I strongly believe in art, and I believe that art will persevere in the long term. And a decade from now, 2 decades from now, there's this thing that my wife was talking about the other day. She's like, people often wonder, like, how were artists so good 100 years ago? And why is everything so shit when I go to a gallery now? And what she was saying is that it's actually not true. Like, 100 years ago, there were just as many shitty artists. It's just that like 99% of them have been forgotten. And so, you know, we're only able to see the things that persevered and lasted. And so we have this asymmetric view of, oh, in the past, things were great. And you know, artists were producing beautiful work and everyone was, you know, such a genius kind of thing. But it's really not the case. And so what does that have to do with Gucci or NFT space? Is like, I think even if Gucci doesn't exist or something like Gucci doesn't exist, 10 or 20 years from now, the space will be cleaned up, right? Like, it will take care of itself, because things that don't have value and aren't worthwhile will be forgotten. But Gucci for me is like a way for me to accelerate the space to a future time position so that I can see as much shit as I can before I die. Like, I want to see like, to fast forward through the noise and the nonsense. And so I think that having this price discovery mechanism will allow projects which are just rug pulls and cash grabs to be zeroed out more quickly than they would otherwise. And that way, I think it will allow the Cardano NFT space to kind of navigate to actually worthwhile creators in the space, which, to be frank, a lot of times I think the people with the best intentions are drowned out by the hype and the noise. And what Gucci is really designed to do is to turn the volume down on the noisy hype stuff, the FOMO stuff, and allow actually valid, interesting work to have more percentage of attention. So I don't know, are you familiar with the concept of signal to noise? Like, I have a microphone, right? It's capturing my voice and you know, trying to block out the background noise. I think that unsigned algorithms for me was like a signal project. I was trying to put a perspective out there, what I was looking to do, and it's supposed to be like a peak or a mountain. Now, you can say whatever you want about me or whether the work succeeds or not, but that's like one thing. Gucci is more a noise reduction project to me. Like, if we're at a club, right? Like, it's very hard to have a conversation because the speakers are so loud and there's so much dancing going on and people shouting. Like, it's just a dumb environment to have a conversation. And so you have two options. You can either leave and go outside, or you can try to reduce the volume in the space. Maybe it's an idiotic move to, as you were saying, to try to reduce the volume in the space. But I have a long-term interest in Cardano. I don't really have the option of leaving. I want to be in Cardano. So while you can leave a club and go outside and have a decent conversation with someone, like, that's not really an option for me at this point. And so I want to try to create a better NFT ecosystem. And I think if you think about it, it could actually cause Cardano to have a competitive advantage over other chains, because if Cardano is not unique, right, in its NFT scene, most NFT scenes are the same. They have a bunch of shitty projects that are just trying to take people's money. But imagine Cardano, because Gucci exists and it's harder to have these rug pulls because people are kind of clued in that I shouldn't mint this nonsense. or I shouldn't hope that someone buys it from me for higher because it's very likely that this will get shorted on Gucci. We could actually have a higher hit rate of like more well-intentioned creators in Cardano, and that could produce like a virtuous feedback cycle where, because we have better projects that are well-intentioned on Cardano, more people who are looking for quality work come to Cardano, and that creates this kind of, you know, positive feedback loop versus this kind of negative, it's just rug pulls, it's just Fiverr to image magic, you know, to minting service pipeline that is so prevalent in the space. And I think almost anyone surely who's listening to this, like, probably had a different idea for how NFTs would turn out a year or two ago, right? Like I used to be quite optimistic. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like an individual artist suddenly has global distribution to anyone in the world to, you know, share their work and their perspective. This is going to be like a golden age of human creativity. And, you know, instead we got the answer to like, what is every way you can draw every animal with every hat in the world? And it's just like, Jesus Christ, shoot me.
Yeah, but about that, do Gucci support fungible tokens, and is there other kinds of NFTs that you see in the future for this platform of yours?
Yeah, so that's kind of where the presentation ended. We've kind of not used the word NFT on the site a lot because it does work for any native token. So you could use Gucci to borrow or lend MinSwap tokens, you know, and the quantity can be 1 million or whatever, right? The one thing is we focus mostly on NFTs. So our smart contract supports multiple assets and higher quantities than one. But of course, for NFTs, the quantity is always one, right? So the UX is mostly designed around this, but it's actually, I think the larger idea of Gucci is, we're all familiar with DeFi, right? I think what Gucci is really pointing to is NFT-Fi, which is like, it's like a subspecies of DeFi kind of thing. But like, again, we all have these assets, which may or may not be art or may not be some utility thing to some other platform. But right now, the only game an investor can play is buy it low and sell it higher, right? And what Gucci does is, one, it allows you to short, but two, it allows you to use this as, like I said, a rent generating asset. And I think, you know, one thing that's probably surprised a lot of crypto people, including myself, is how good NFTs are at onboarding people, right? Like I've been in crypto since 2012, end of 2012, 2013-ish. And I've never seen this kind of like wide mainstream-ish adoption in the crypto space. And so it's really, as much as I disparage monkey JPEGs and this kind of thing, like it is kind of a really interesting thing to me that this tool has been used in this way and can bring so many eyeballs into the space. And so what I'm kind of looking at for Gucci's more medium and long-term roadmap is maybe this is like the baby steps into DeFi or to other solutions where this is de facto where the interest is in the crypto space. Like 40% of all projects on Cardano are NFT projects, right? And so how do we, if we assume this is the base layer of the chain, how do we develop products and services for this segment of people who, I'd say, like, it's very capitally inefficient if you think about it from a pure financial play, right? That you're locking up all this money into an asset and then you just sit on it. Like, I don't know many other financial instruments which act this way, right? That you hope for long-term appreciation. There's no dividend. There's no kind of thing. And the times that I do see it in the NFT space, they usually have a kind of quality of Ponzi scheme to them, where like the staking rewards are paid out by some inflationary token that only the holders have access to, kind of thing. And the point about, that's why I hesitate to call Gucci's fees staking rewards, but it's essentially a way to generate a yield in a totally sustainable way, because the fuel for that yield is not some inflationary token emission. It's bear sentiment paying you for the right to borrow your asset for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And I think that's what we need to do in Cardano or crypto more generally is find sustainable engines to drive these yield mechanisms beyond inflation. Because we're all here because we like deflationary assets. And the first thing we do is create these like shit coins that just, you know, Jerome Powell print token kind of thing. And it's really weird to me that we haven't found, you know, like other plants use photosynthesis to convert the sunlight into sugars, you know, that they can to create energy for themselves. We need to find other energy sources to drive the kind of economic engines in the blockchain space, other than let's make a new token and let's, you know, print it and this kind of thing. So
yeah, great. I'm also thinking about you mentioned some fees regarding the change of hands here. The tough question, I didn't see royalties in this diagram
Yes.
of yours. Is there any notion of royalties?
So it's very important, and I think that the number one use case for NFTs when I talk to artists in real life is royalties. Gucci, with the borrowing and lending, we have no intention of supporting royalties, because from our perspective, it is not a royalty triggering event. Like if I have a painting in my house and I lent it to you, I don't have any expectation, and you have to give it back to me. I have no expectation that this should trigger royalties in real life, moralistically, ethically. It's just borrowing and lending. HODLs, to be fair, this is much more like a sale, right? And I can understand people saying you should pay royalties on this. It's really just a factor of, I've said this, when we first announced Gucci back in September, HODLs were not a thing. They were on our roadmap, but it was like, we'll do this later. But based on the feedback we received, people were worried, like, if I borrow an NFT that I don't like and I'm stuck and I can't sell it on JPEG Store, you know, like that's not a good user experience flow, right? And so what we did is we came up with this HODL idea, which, to be honest, it's just a borrow that expires instantly. If you think about it, right? Like if I borrow an NFT from you and we say that the duration is 0, then you instantly can claim my collateral, right? Does that make sense? So
yeah, and I was thinking about that collateral part as an actual sale, and in that way triggering a royalty.
So I'm a big proponent of code is law, and you know, ETH Classic or this kind of thing. I actually think that on Cardano, royalties are an unsolved problem, and that, you know, this opt-in mechanism that we all have, it's nice that people are playing nice, but I think we need an actual solution to royalties. And so the collateral sale or the HODL, like, I would argue that if I have the option of not following the royalty standard, there is no royalty standard, and that it should be fixed. And I think that's something that the NFT Guild or other players in the space should address. And like, I don't really agree with what we've done. You know, like, we like to kick Solana for Magic Eden and their royalty position, but we're not really any better. You know, just saying that, like, oh, well, on Cardano, we're all behaving correctly. Blockchains are not about behaving correctly. They're about ensuring correctness of behavior, or not having the option to behave incorrectly. And so until such, like, we're trying to support it, but to be honest, it's not really compatible with our architecture, because we have the intention of trying to make Gucci like a real dApp, which means that you should be able to clone our code base, run it locally, and be able to access all the transactions on chain. And right now, the only way that I'm aware of to get the metadata, royalty metadata, is like, you need like a full DB sync instance, you know, like a Cardano node, DB sync, Postgres. And that means you need like 32 gigs of RAM to be able to access this information, or you need to use block frost. And these are, you know, we're not into these kind of centralized mechanisms. And so it's not compatible with our future roadmap, where we want people to be able to run Gucci locally, so that even if we disappear, they can still access and build, transactions using Gucci protocol. And that to me is like, maybe you've experienced this with MinSwap, right? MinSwap is turned off a few times, right? With the batchers and everything. Like, to me, that's not really a dApp. Like, if you can turn it off, it's not a decentralized application if you're relying on these batchers or these other things. I'd say that's much more of like a centralized service that is deployed to a blockchain, which is, it's okay. Like, that's another, there's valid use cases for that. I use MinSwap. I love MinSwap, but it's not a dApp. And we are interested in moving Gucci in the direction of dApp. And right now, I think CIP68 could resolve this a bit with what Alessandro is doing. But I'm looking forward to this royalty question being solved by Cardano at the ledger level, or at the code level, because frankly, another idea that I've had is, I don't think I'll ever sell another NFT again. I would only do free mints with high royalties, because I think, if you do that, like, why would, if quality artists, which, I generously include myself as part of that, are giving away their work for free, why would you give money to some like scammer rug pull, right? But in order for that to work, royalties need to be enforceable. And so I think, I want to mint or give away things at 0 ADA with like a 10 to 15% royalty, and I want that to be respected. But I don't think that is possible right now on Cardano, the way things are set up. So I'm a little bit playing devil's advocate here and saying, look, Cardano people, it's great that everyone's behaving nicely, but let's not pretend we're any better than Magic Eden or Solana right now, because we're not. It's just human behavior. And I want to not have to rely on human behavior. That's why I'm interested in blockchains.
Thank you.
And the last thing I'll say is, if you are using JPEG Store to buy and sell, every short on Gucci, the person has to first sell the NFT and then buy an NFT. So that actually likely triggers, if you're using the main marketplace, 2 sales for every short position, which this is why I say liquidity is coming, right? If shorters or bears can participate in the market, you should start to see, once people start to understand what's happening, it could drive, in real life, there's probably like 10 people or 9 people out of every 10 are probably NFT skeptics for every 1 bull. And probably it's much more than that. But if people learn that they can make money on JPEGs going to 0, I'd expect there to be a lot more participation, a lot more volatility initially and churn. But I think it will start to kind of separate cream from milk, right? Kind of thing. Like the good stuff will rise to the top, and then the bad stuff will get zeroed out. So someday I'll learn to give a short answer. I'm sorry.
Oh, that was very well put, a very articulate point on royalties. And for what it's worth, we've been trying to solve the problem for the past 6 months or so. Personally, we've been very interested. That's what drew us into NFTs in the first place in late 2020. And we've been trying to champion this in various ways, including the release of our first collection, which was the first collection to be transacted through a smart contract, like minutes after the Alonso. And that wasn't the point of it, actually. That was just a way to draw attention to the topic of royalties, because that smart contract which transacted it also paid a royalty. And we hoped that people, by paying attention to the actual first to have a smart contract, whatever, would also get to hear about the royalties part.
It's really important.
Yeah, it didn't pan out that way, but yeah.
I wouldn't give up. I mean, it's a really important thing. I think it will involve getting other artists involved. I don't know if it's similar to what you're doing. My one idea is, when I lived in India, whenever you bought or sold a house, there was what they called the white price and the black price. And the white price is like the recorded sale price to the government. And this is important because this is what you pay taxes on. But there's almost always some cash that goes under the table, which is called the black price, right? Like if we're talking about like a $200,000 house, this might be $50,000. It might be another $100,000 of like, the goal is to avoid paying taxes on this and to do this under the table. So one model that I had an idea for, maybe similar to yours, is much more like the Ethereum model. There might be like an owner's registry that is a smart contract on Cardano that records all the actual owners of the thing. Of course, on Cardano, because these are native assets, you can send it to whomever you want, whenever you want, and there's no ability to prevent that, nor should we really kind of do it if you think about it, right? It's my property. But the idea is that you can send your NFT to whoever you want to, but if you want to participate in the kind of benefits, any like external benefits of owning this NFT tied to maybe Discord access or airdrops or whatever, you have to transfer the asset through the smart contract so that, you pay the royalties as done by the smart contract, and only doing that updates the owner's address. So if you're doing all these black under the table transactions, sending the NFT wherever you want to, you can do that. But whoever was the last person to pay royalties is, for the purpose of the project's perspective, the owner of the NFT. And so people are incentivized to use the smart contract to transfer. It's like a land registry essentially with the government, right? That you're incentivized to come back to the smart contract and pay the kind of the royalty fee, because otherwise, Bob from 10 sales ago is going to continue to receive the airdrops or whatever extraneous benefits there are, because wherever the token is it's kind of like if I steal a car, I have possession of the car, but I don't own the car, right? And this would introduce the same kind of concept to the NFT space. You can possess an NFT, but as far as the artist is concerned, the person who will continue to receive the benefits of patronage is the last person to pay royalties. Does that make sense? As like a,
Yeah, no, we thought about that idea actually. The only reason why we didn't go ahead with it so far was that we actually prefer a mechanism to be completely on-chain. This would require a lot of off-chain processing or activity. The databases for artists that you described obviously would have to live off-chain. And until we get to the point, I think it's a very good option ultimately if no other option presents itself technically. But let's first try to exhaust technical options to get something completely on-chain to work.
For sure.
Happen maybe. We're not technical people. That's why we wanted to collaborate with as many developers in the space as possible to get something more robust.
I think with reference scripts and inline datums, it might be possible to fit it all on chain. That you would essentially have, the index of the NFT, the number it was in the thing. Pull focus, please. This is my hack, and update, the address of the recipient. I think it's possible to do it on chain, but it would be it's a hairy problem, and it's not solved. But it's very important, and I think a group such as this, I think it's the #1 problem in the NFT space is legit code is law royalties.
No, as artists we agree.
Yeah.
Not a lot of attention in this space has been given if it's not monetizable, and unfortunately royalties or paying royalties is not monetizable directly by minting services or marketplaces or
well, I mean my personal feeling is that there should be a generic listing contract, which is like the owner lists this NFT or this thing and says, you must pay me 500 ADA for this NFT. And there's actually no royalties or no marketplace fee built into that, right? And then any marketplace could look at this generic listing and they can add in other features on top of it, like because this solves the problem of like the network effect of CNFT.io or JPEG Store. Like nobody can really compete as a new marketplace because you can't get enough listing quantity that anyone will actually visit your site. And this puts Cardano in a disadvantage because we can only get new features when the dominant marketplace chooses to enable them, right? And this is what I would vastly prefer is anyone who's willing to sell their NFT on Cardano, any marketplace should be able to see those listings. And then, you know, the marketplace can choose, we support artist royalties, we support, and this is our platform fee, and this is our whatever, right? Any other additional monetary exchanges that are happening on top of that. And that I think will allow a lot more incremental upgrades rather than these large step changes. Like CNFTO lost to JPEG Store because they completely just floundered their advantage. And maybe at some point in the future, JPEG Store will have a similar kind of situation and somebody else will displace them. But we would be much better off as an ecosystem if a player could introduce an advantage and it could get traction because people would go to that site and use that site because it you know, without having to get 20,000 listings on that site, because these things otherwise just like they don't work. The best example I can give is HODLs, I think, were actually implemented by Jam on Bread. I think they have collection offers. Have you ever heard of Jam on Bread? I think it's the Wing Riders Vacuum Labs. They had this thing, and I thought it would be a game changer because like it's actual demand, but apparently nobody really understood it, or they didn't get enough traffic to their site for it to really take off. I'll just say, like, I asked JPEG Store, an employee in real life, like, please, do you guys think you can make collection offers? Because it will really help Gucci, right? If people can access instantaneous liquidity when they borrow an NFT to be able to sell it and then to rebuy and this kind of thing. But I'm not commenting. They have their own internal roadmaps and other things, but that's all I'm saying is it's Cardano would be better off if anybody can make a small improvement and they don't have to get the entire NFT market listings to migrate to them. And there's suddenly, you know, a much more competitive landscape and field for people to innovate and contribute to the space, rather than the big guy has to fall in order for, like, the king is dead, long live the king. Like, that's not a really good way to have a kind of innovative marketplace situation or ecosystem on Cardano, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the disadvantages of native assets. And you eloquently explained what are the advantages of native assets, but this is one of the disadvantages, that it creates this system of one player takes all, winner takes all.
Well,
it encourages.
What I would encourage, I think, if every other non-JPEG Store marketplace collaborated to come up with this, you know, what I described as this, just the sell price and the address to the recipient of the owner, and then they extended these other things on top of it, I think that would kind of solve this problem. Because if you were using epoch.art or any of these other smaller marketplaces, like right now, the listings are just way too fragmented, right? But if it's like, these are the JPEG Store listings and these are like everyone else's listings, right? Like there's a chance that everyone else could eclipse JPEG Store. And I'm pretty sure JPEG Store would start to support that thing, because like they're very kind of I like them, but like this kind of wag me kind of, you know, like community oriented thing. They just need to be pressured into doing it, and then they'll do it, right? But yeah,
you mentioned Gem on Bread, and they were trying to do this aggregator, marketplace aggregator kind of stuff. So you could easily buy from whatever marketplace. Of course, most of the listings were on JPEG, but somehow they managed to access that the JPEG smart contract and deliver the NFT by buying on their platform with no visible lag.
Yeah, but the problem is that you start to stack everyone's fees on, right? What I'm saying is, like, the core listing should not include the marketplace fee, and the marketplace fee should be built into the transaction by the marketplaces, right? So that you don't get this 2% of being paid to JPEG and then another 2%, like that kills the competitiveness, right? That essentially people want to pay less. And so,
I think for now, Jam on Bread didn't have any fees of their own,
Oh, really?
but of course that's not sustainable in the long run. Yeah, we had the CEO of Wing Riders on a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned that they're not actively, so the company Vacuum Labs are not actively developing Jam on Bread anymore, and they sold the product off to a new team. So let's see what comes out of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an exciting space to be in. I think I like the bear market because I think a lot of the noise goes away. And I think, you know, the people that are still around are it's my interest in signal to noise. Like there's a lot more signal in the bear market and a lot less noise. And so I enjoy it, even though it's a little bit painful. If anyone is ever in Portugal, please look me up. I'm staying in Lisbon. It's very advantageous for NFT creators. I've read that royalties have some kind of special tax status. Like everyone knows Madonna. Like Madonna moved to Portugal a while ago for tax residency purposes, because even traditional artists, if your income is royalty derived, I believe it's at a lower percentage of tax rate. So even if MiCA happens and European tax regulations come in around crypto, you know, in most countries, how you earn the money affects how it's taxed. So it doesn't matter what you pay in, right? Like if I'm working a 9-to-5 job in the USA and my employer pays me in coffee beans, I still pay income tax because that is income type net, you know, returns to me or whatever. Whereas what I'm trying to say is, even in the crypto space, Portugal for now has quite good tax regulations, 0% on basically anything. But next year it's going to 0% if you hold longer than a year in a first in, first out system. But even if larger regulations come in, I believe the royalties are under some separate tax classification. And also in Portugal, NFTs are not viewed as cryptocurrencies. They're exempt from the coming cryptocurrency legislation because they're just seen as like separate kind of things, which is a little bit interesting to me. So I think it's very advantageous for people who want to live in Europe and be in a tax advantageous crypto situation. So and then there's a lot of just energy and like 3 crypto meetups a week here, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, from different groups of people. And I'm trying to get together a Cardano focused one sometime soon. So we'll see. If anyone is interested, please DM me.
Sounds nice. Getting back to Gucci a bit before we wrap up. Our main concern, or not concern, but perhaps objection would be a more accurate word to the platform, is that you're treating NFTs almost like fungible assets, right? Even if I have a floor NFT, or what's called a floor NFT, I might be emotionally attached or to that particular NFT if the market doesn't consider it to be something special, and I might not be willing to put it up for offer at that price.
So I agree. Like I think in that case, for that case, I hope no one believes it's tricky because we're using English to describe, you know, with its own norms what this is, but it's not really a loan. It's a very abstract notion of a loan, where if I lend you a cup, right, and you say you don't have to pay me back this cup, you have to pay me back a cup, right? Like that's kind of what a Gucci loan is, where we're setting out some loan terms, but the repayment terms are not in the same way that you would expect at a one-to-one. And it is fungibilizing for free the entire collection under the policy ID. And this doesn't work for a lot of things, right? Like if this is like a one-of-one art piece, or if it's not interchangeable, you absolutely shouldn't use Gucci to lend out that thing that is meaningful to you. But that's also okay, I think, because not everything has to work for everyone for everything they own, right? Like a lot of people, I think how I see Gucci working, if you minted 50 to 100 NFTs from a collection, you probably have maybe 10 to 50 of them that you really like, that like are meaningful to you. But you probably have another, maybe you have some floor pieces that you also really like because they speak to you. But there's also probably, you know, a quarter to 10% of them that like, they're kind of interchangeable to you. And those are the NFTs that you should use. We designed this working for floor NFTs because just mathematically, it seems like those are the largest class of NFTs, right? But we do see in the future, like, let's say you're a Space Buds fan. You can imagine in the future, like, you might have like sub-tribes within Space Buds of like the sharks versus the elephants. And even though you're a Space Bud bull, you might think, oh, sharks are overpriced or elephants are overpriced, right? Like we can see enabling, especially with CIP68 or with some off-chain magic using the existing metadata, you could set the terms a little bit more tightly. Like I will lend you a shark of this policy ID and you need to pay me back a shark of this policy ID. And yeah, it wouldn't solve everything, but if you had multiple traits, like a shark with a candle, right? Like you could get it more and more tight. Of course, you lose a lot of the liquidity. And I question how much people would actually use that, because again, the what I should make clear is we call this a version 0. Like this is like a public beta that we're doing right now, right? Like, and this is what we thought would deliver the most value to the most people with the least amount of development effort, because we've been working on this probably half a year now without any token, without any investors. And it's like, what can we build that will take the least amount of effort and give us the most bang for the buck? But I also have, you know, I don't really have an issue with it. I think it's quite interesting as an artist, this financialization of artwork, right? Like that, I think when you mint art as a token or tied up somehow, bounded with a token, like you kind of implicitly accept that people will use it in this kind of way. And if you're not comfortable with that, then you should consider, well, do I really want to work in this format or in this medium? But I think that it's it kind of goes with the territory, right? That well, I tend to try to think of the market as a microphone or a megaphone for amplifying your voice, right? Like when I released Unsigned Algorithms, part of me designed the mint such that I thought it would mint out. Have I ever told this story? Have you ever heard this story? Like there were 30,000 unsigs, right? And a lot of people at the time, I think the CNFT IO Discord had 3,000 people at the time. And people are like, Jesus fucking Christ, are you stupid? Like, you can't have an NFT collection with 30,000 pieces. That's too many. And for me, the whole intention of the collection was to arrange these kind of compositions of like, I don't know if you've seen on Twitter where people start to like arrange them into large, like, to me, that's what blockchain art is a little bit about, is like participation between the artist and the participant in co-collaboration. And so I wanted, quite simply, more raw materials available so that more people could have more things to kind of play with or explore. And so 10,000 didn't feel sufficient to me, because that meant there could only ever be 2,500 of these compositions if everyone had, you know, 4 of them. And so I wanted there to be more, you know, clay to explore some kind of plastic urge with. But I realized if you don't mint out your collection, it's kind of death. Like nobody will look at you again. Your project will be forgotten. And it's kind of like the market and the people in the marketplace will be like, that idea was tried and it was invalidated. And so all the ideas contained therein are meaningless because like it didn't work. And I didn't want that to happen. So what I did is I designed the mint's price and the distribution. So the first 10,000, you got 3 for 50 ADA. And then in the next 10,000, you got 2 for 50 ADA. And in the last 10,000, you got 1 for 50 ADA. If you recall, during Space Buds and Cardano Warriors, the entire kind of meta was the first 1,000 are 10 ADA, the next 1,000 are 20 ADA, and the last 1,000 are 100 ADA. And I thought that that was a really bad psychological design, because I didn't think anyone who participated in the beginning would participate in the end. Because like, if you're paying 10x the price, like you're not going to, that's too much pain. Sorry, I'm trying to pull focus again. So the idea that I had was any economic transaction online is equal parts pain and pleasure, or some parts pain and pleasure. They're not equal. Like when I buy something on Amazon, the pain is the amount my debit card balance goes down or my credit card bill goes up, right? And the pleasure is, oh, that's coming tomorrow or 2 days from now. And my idea was, let's have the pleasure go down. From phase 1 to phase 2, it decreases by 33%. And from phase 2 to phase 3, going from 3 to 2 is a reduction of 33%, right, in the amount of pleasure you're receiving. Going from 2 to 1 is a reduction of 50%. I literally designed the curve of this kind of reduction in price so that it got steeper as the mint progressed. But the whole idea was the pain is constant. It's always 50 ADA, because I think humans are more perceptive to pain than pleasure. So the idea that if you went from 10 ADA to 20 to 50 to 100, like in the normal escalating price, it's still an average mint price of 50 ADA, right? Over the entire mint, right? From if you start at 10 and you end at 100, which was kind of the standard. But I thought just setting it like, I have a little bit conditioned my guinea pigs to get used to sending 50 ADA for this thing. But it's like cocaine in those kind of like mouse experiments. The amount of cocaine can go down and down and down, but you've kind of conditioned this behavior such that people get used to sending 50 ADA and they reacclimatize themselves to receiving less and less pleasure, right? And you could say that's sneaky or that's whatever, but I thought that I had an obligation for the mint to succeed so that the ideas contained within it would not be invalidated. And so I viewed commercial success as integral to the success of the ideas of the project, because I think part of the reason UNSIGS has had some kind of staying power over the past year or two is because of the financials or the monetary thing that is surrounding it. Does that make sense? And I think to a certain extent, that has allowed the ideas of the project to not be deleted or forgotten. Because blockchains give you immutability, but what they don't give you is relevance, right? Like we can all mint art to the chain and it will never be gone, but it doesn't mean it will be remembered. And that is a kind of interesting thing to me. The distinction between, I try to explain, like for me, art is like resistance to entropy. You know, like humans literally build institutions to preserve great works of art, because the natural order of things is for anything to, you know, increase in disorder as time passes, right? For in a closed system, just like second law of thermodynamics. But something like the Mona Lisa, to use a bad example, like there's literally like this thing that tries to make sure the Mona Lisa doesn't disintegrate, you know, and that's kind of, again, that's given for free in an NFT. Nothing on a blockchain will ever disintegrate, but it can be forgotten. And I think that distinction kind of shifts the onus on the artist to how do the ideas that you're putting on chain stay relevant and stay part of the kind of disciplinary conversation going forward and not be deemed as irrelevant or as not of import or something like that. So probably a little bit too dumb, but NFTs, monkey JPEGs, sorry. I have an eyelash in my coffee. It's quite disturbing.
Of course, that's viewing art as a social construct, and in that confines of that social construct, not as art in itself as the abstract. But yeah, if viewed that way, what you said is completely relevant.
To be clear, I don't think all art has to last or address this kind of temporal aspects, but I think a lot of the opportunity, especially with art as it relates to the blockchain space, is I think the economic aspects are part of the performance. You know, like if I'm very interested in like what is the intrinsic properties of a medium, right? Like what is photography about? What is painting about? What is dance about? And I think to me, it feels like by putting art on a blockchain, you're implicitly kind of have this opportunity to like look at the market of art in a way that I think artists who are just subject to the market, you know, at Sotheby's or Christie's, or, you know, this kind of financialization of art, which is something probably most artists feel some tension with. There's a bit of a way to include that financial aspect as part of the piece, and to not, you know, like if Warhol was this like pop master who incorporates pop mainstream culture into his work, I think blockchains have the opportunity to kind of give artists the tools to fight back and to kind of include as commentary part of this financialization explicitly in the work itself, and to start to use it as a means to express themselves, or to increase the kind of perception of their work. I haven't been paying attention to the chat. I don't know if there's a no.
Not anything
Okay,
relevant.
Felix, yeah.
Did you have any more questions? Maybe more on the technical side, if
Gucci, I'll just say we're not trying to be a marketplace or a DEX. Like we're trying to stay kind of, we want to keep making like new, interesting opportunities for people in the NFT space, but we don't want to be a JPEG store or a epoch.art or a marketplace. Like what we kind of view as important is we want to write small modular smart contracts that other people can compose together and use as part of some larger orchestration. And so you'll never be able to like buy an individual NFT. Like there's not going to be I want to buy this NFT on this marketplace. And that's kind of the other answer we have to royalties, is that like, you know, if you want a specific NFT, go to JPEG store. Like that's and you know, royalties are enforced there. But if you're just thinking about this in the abstract of like, I want a thing of this, that's our moral justification to ourselves of, you know, why we haven't supported and opted into the current royalty structure, is that you're kind of dealing with like an abstraction on like a cat versus this cat. No comment on boss cat. But like yeah,
but all cats have been created by the same artist or the same creator. So in your example, any cat that would sell on JPEG would pay the artist that same percentage of royalties. So it's
I get it. It's not a perfect answer at all. It's my answer right now, and it has something to do with specificity, right? That my perception is that most people who are involved in flipping NFTs don't really care about the art. They don't care about the you know, they are fungible essentially, right? And so that's why I think there's so much interest in the floor, right? That like for a lot of people, when they see the numbers start to go up, they go to JPEG store and they buy the cheapest thing they can get in the hopes that they can like hold on to the bottom rung of the ladder as the rocket takes off. And there isn't a lot of investment emotionally or artistically in the piece they're acquiring. And so Gucci, to be fair, it's not really, as you noted earlier, it's not targeting like art, right? Like, and early on, I think a lot of artists were very concerned, like this is going to attack them or this is going to hurt them. And my main kind of comment was that, like, frankly, like no one's going to use Gucci to short your project, because like there's just not enough volume and liquidity and interest in your work right now that anyone would go through the hassle of doing this. Like this is really about high volume, high liquidity projects that are mostly financial speculative instruments to be able to speculate on. It's not, there's really not much intersection between art and Gucci as I see it, right? It is for the interchangeable assets in the space, which I view as much more utility, community driven projects kind of thing, where they are kind of interchangeable. And so that's my logic, is that it's just, even though we're all making NFTs, like there's a different class of instrument, even though they're NFTs.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That was another comment that we had, was revolving around the fact that Gucci basically only applies to the top of the market, right? So it, like you said, it would never apply to a low liquidity, low volume project, which most of, if not all of the art projects are.
Yeah. And it's just, again, part of the intention, is I'm not interested in fungible collections or collectible collections. And part of this is like my response to seeing something that is a little bit distasteful to me, right? That like, I wish more attention was paid to the art. And so what Gucci is really designed to do is to kind of dry up interest in purely speculative financial instruments of, I often call NFTs, collectible NFTs, like they're shit coins with JPEGs, right? Like it's really no different than some random Telegram pump and dump group, except you get a JPEG with your shitcoin. And like, for me, being in crypto since 2013, I don't understand the novelty or attraction of that thing. The one thing that they do better is that, like, if you're in a Telegram group that's gonna, like send a buy signal, like everyone market buy this coin at this certain time. The beauty of an NFT project is like you essentially get your bag holders to shill the project on Twitter and on, other platforms for you. And so like the mark is the perpetrator of violence on other people. And it's kind of like a really weird ecosystem. And I do believe in the value of NFTs as a kind of exploratory medium for humanity. And my intention with Gucci is to kind of advance that into a more productive conversation by, again, fast forwarding us through this kind of speculative bubble period, by allowing a lot of bubbles to pop, by, basically educate. I think my father allowed me to make a lot of mistakes as a teenager and as a young adult, with the idea that like, yeah, you have to fuck up in order to learn things. And I think for most people, they need to fuck up in order to learn a lesson. And so it sucks, but if you don't already know these things about crypto and about these kind of tokens, like there's not much that can happen other than you witnessing, the Terra Luna blow up, or all these other kinds of things that happen in crypto space that, OGs become dead inside to. Like, I don't know, it kind of sucks. But thank you. I'm sorry this was so long, but it was interesting to talk to you guys.
No, it was very good.
Yeah.
It was actually the longest roundtable that we held so far. But you have nothing to apologize for. It was a really nice conversation and a nice presentation in the beginning. Sent, if you have any more questions, if not.
No, I'm very happy. Very interesting discussion, and thank you for the great answers.
Thank you for the great questions.
So that wraps up the 13th NFT Guild Roundtable. Thanks, Alexander, for.
Happy New Year. Bad taste to do it too early, but see you guys next year.
Yeah. Happy holidays. Bye.